Imagine this: you open your eyes, and the world you know has slipped away. Around you stretches a golden meadow, alive with the hum of cicadas and the scent of wild thyme. Sunlight spills over hills where shepherds once sang, and somewhere nearby, the trembling notes of a lyre rise into the air. The sound is so pure, so piercing, that even the stones seem to lean closer to listen. You think myths are only stories? To the ancient Greeks, they were more than tales. They were the breath of the world, the rhythm of love and loss, the laws that bound the living and the dead. And among all those myths, one song lingers longer than the rest. It is the song of Orpheus and Eurydice, a song of devotion so fierce it dared to challenge death itself, and of a single glance that shattered eternity. But before we walk with them, before we follow Orpheus down into shadows and hear the music that hushed even the Furies, let us pause. Let us stand in the wide daylight of Greece, and listen to how stories were once told. Imagine yourself by the sea, the Aegean blue and endless, waves breaking against rocks with white foam. On the shore, a circle of listeners gathers. Some are fishermen mending their nets, hands calloused, smelling faintly of salt. Others are women carrying amphorae balanced on their heads, their tunics fluttering in the warm breeze. Children sit cross-legged at the edge, their eyes wide. And in the center, a rhapsode, a wandering poet, raises his voice. He does not read. He remembers. His lips shape the words that have lived 100 years on the tongues of other poets, passed from one voice to another like a flame carried carefully through the dark. For the Greeks, stories were not silent things written in books. They were alive. They breathed when spoken, grew stronger each time a lyre's strings shivered with them. They were both entertainment and truth, both lesson and prayer. A myth was not something you believed, or didn't believe. It was a way of seeing the world, of understanding why the seasons turned, why rivers overflowed, why death always seemed close at hand. The gods were not distant abstractions but presences in every grove, every storm, every glance of fortune or disaster. To speak of Orpheus was to speak not only of one man, but of the fragile power of song, of the yearning every human carries to undo loss. Close your eyes for a moment, and imagine what it felt like to be there. The sun sinking low, the olive trees casting long shadows. The rhapsode's voice rising and falling, carrying you with it. In the distance, goats bleat, and the faint jangle of bells threads into the story. The air is heavy with the scent of honey cakes baking in clay ovens. But when he speaks of Orpheus, even those sounds fade. It is as if the whole world leans forward to listen, hushed by the weight of the tale. Why this myth, above so many others? Greece is rich with stories of gods who thunder, heroes who kill, maidens transformed into trees or stars. Yet this tale is different. It is not about conquest or pride, not about the clash of armies or the vanity of kings. It is about love. Pure, fragile, human love. And that is why it lasts. Because when you hear Orpheus play, you recognize something. His longing is your longing. His grief is your grief. His mistake, turning too soon, is a mistake you too might have made. He is divine in talent, yet terribly human in heart. And Eurydice, she is not a warrior, not a scheming goddess, not a queen. She is a nymph, gentle, unassuming, more quiet meadow than battlefield. She is not remembered for her cunning or her power, but for her presence, the way Orpheus saw her, the way her absence burned a hole through the world. In her you see the loved one you have lost, or fear to lose. Together, their story becomes something more than myth, it becomes a mirror. Think of the countless voices that have told this tale. Homer knew of Orpheus. So did Virgil, Ovid, and the playwrights of Athens. Later, medieval monks whispered the tale in cloisters, while Renaissance painters set brush to canvas to capture that one fatal glance backward. Even now, composers, poets, filmmakers return to it. Why? Because something in the story will not die. It is like a song that, once sung, cannot be forgotten. Even death could not silence it. So let us walk together into it. Step by step, as if we are there. Picture the fields where they first met, the wedding torches that flickered with joy, the serpent's sudden strike. Picture Orpheus alone, his lyre across his knees, tears cutting lines down his face as he plays to an unanswering sky. Picture the path downward, into earth, into silence, where shades drift like smoke. You and I, we will follow him. We will feel the heat of the sun fade, replaced by the damp chill of the underworld. We will hear his notes echo in caverns where no bird sings, where only the dead wander. We will watch him bargain with the rulers of death itself. And we will hold our breath as he leads Eurydice back, every step trembling with hope and doubt. Do you feel it already, the pull of the story? It is not just theirs. It is ours. The Greeks believed Orpheus was more than a man. He was a myth, yes, but also a memory of something universal, the need to believe that love might bend even the iron rules of mortality. And so, even now, his name carries weight. Orpheus, the singer. Eurydice, the beloved. Together, they remind us that music is more than sound, it is the voice of the soul reaching across the abyss. And so, as the echoes of the story linger in your mind, you begin to wonder, who was he, this man who could bend the world with music? Orpheus. The name itself feels like a note plucked from a lyre, vibrating in the air. He was no ordinary singer, no mere poet. The Greeks called him the son of a muse, a child born from inspiration itself. Imagine that, your mother not a mortal woman, but Calliope, the muse of epic poetry, the voice who guided Homer when he spoke of Achilles' wrath and Odysseus' long wandering. Calliope was not simply a figure of myth, she embodied the living breath of art, the power that turns memory into song, grief into beauty. To be her son meant carrying a gift that was more than talent. It was destiny. And his father? Some said it was Eurydice, a king of Thrace, stern and mortal. Others whispered it was Apollo himself, the god of light and music, who gave Orpheus his first lyre. Either way, he was born standing with one foot in the human world and the other in the divine. The Greeks loved such figures, those who blurred the line between mortal and god. For in them, humanity could glimpse its highest possibility, and its deepest tragedy. Picture him as a boy in Thrace, the northern land of forests and rivers, where winds sweep cold from the mountains and wolves sing under the moon. He is not like other children. When they wrestle or chase, he sits apart, plucking reeds to make pipes, stringing gut across wood to hear how it hums. His hands are restless, but not with swords or spears. They are restless with sound. At first, he learns alone, listening to the rhythm of rain on leaves, the call of birds, the murmur of rivers over stone. Nature is his teacher, and he echoes it until he can summon the cry of an eagle, the sigh of the sea. And then the lyre. Apollo's gift, or perhaps his mother's. Imagine him cradling it for the first time, its polished wood gleaming, the strings quivering like sunlight on water. He touches them, and something happens. Not just music, but transformation. The sheep grazing nearby lift their heads. The trees lean closer, as if thirsting for the sound. Even the air seems to still, listening. The Greeks said his music did not entertain, it commanded. Rocks softened, rivers paused, wild beasts gathered tame at his feet. It was not sorcery. It was harmony, the great truth the Greeks believed lay beneath all things. To them, music was not just noise arranged prettily. It was mathematics, proportion, the echo of the very structure of the cosmos. The stars moved in harmony, the body breathed in rhythm, the seasons turned with a hidden music. And Orpheus, he could play that hidden order aloud. Can you imagine it? You're standing at the edge of a grove, and suddenly the forest itself seems to sway with him. Birds circle above, wolves sit calmly beside deer, enemies lay down their weapons. No one resists, because in that moment, His song reminds them of something older than anger, older than hunger, the deep peace of being part of the whole. This is why gods themselves listened. Zeus with his thunder, Athena with her wisdom, even grim Hades in his shadowed hall, all turned an ear when Orpheus sang. For music was the one force that could slip past armor, past logic, past law, straight into the marrow of being. And Orpheus carried it like a torch in his hands. The world, of course, noticed. Kings invited him to courts, not for counsel, but for his lyre. Heroes called him to join their quests, knowing that where swords clashed and tempers burned, his music could soothe or inspire. When Jason sailed to seek the Golden Fleece, Orpheus was there among the Argonauts. Think of it, a ship of warriors, each famed for strength, and in their midst a quiet poet with a lyre. Yet when the sirens sang their deadly song, luring sailors to destruction, it was Orpheus who saved them all, his notes, rising pure above the temptation, drowning it in harmony so radiant that even the sirens fell silent. This was his power, not brute force, not cunning schemes, but beauty. And in the Greek mind, beauty was not soft. It was the strongest force of all, because it reshaped the soul. What spear could boast the same? But let us not make him a marble statue, perfect and distant. Imagine him instead as a man, living, breathing. His hair dark, his eyes quick and thoughtful, his hands calloused not from sword but from string. He is gentle, yes, but also restless. For such a gift is not a burden easily borne. To carry beauty is to feel its absence all the more keenly. Those who live nearest to harmony know how discord cuts. And in Orpheus, there was always a hunger, a yearning that no song fully sated. Perhaps that is why he loved so fiercely. Music opens the heart, and his was wide, tender, unguarded. To encounter Orpheus was to feel seen, understood, as if his song plucked not just the air, but the secret strings within your chest. It is no wonder that when he saw Eurydice, the world shifted. For the man whose music could move mountains was himself moved by the simple presence of a woman in a meadow. But that, my friend, is for us to walk into soon. For now, stay with Orpheus. Stay with the boy who became a singer of gods and men. The Greeks called him the greatest poet. But more than that, they called him the greatest lover, for who but a lover would dare descend into death for a voice, a touch, a memory? And even as we stand with him in his youth, hear the faint whisper of his fate already threaded into his notes. Every song he plays carries two tones, one of joy, one of sorrow. For to sing so purely is always to feel the shadow of silence pressing at the edge. And Orpheus knew, perhaps better than anyone, that no music lasts forever. And then, into the world of his music, she steps. Eurydice. Her name whispers like a breeze across grass, like the ripple of water when a nymph dips her hand in a stream. She does not arrive with fanfare, no thunderbolt marks her entrance, no prophecy thunders her significance. She is not a queen, not a goddess, not the heroine of a dozen other myths. She is simply herself, a dryad, a woodland nymph, daughter of nature's quiet rhythms. Imagine her in that meadow where their eyes first met. The air smells of wild mint and crushed violets beneath her feet. She moves lightly, as if the earth itself carries her along. Her hair catches the sunlight like a net of gold, though the Greeks would not have called it gold, but wheat at harvest, amber warmed by fire. Her dress is simple linen, the fabric clinging from the morning dew, and in her hands she carries a small bundle of herbs gathered for the day's rites. She is not dazzling in the way goddesses are painted, not armored like Athena, not radiant like Aphrodite, but there is something gentler, a beauty that feels lived in, like the hush of twilight, the steady warmth of a hearth. It is said that Orpheus looked up from his lyre, saw her walking among the flowers, and in that instant his song changed. Until then, he had played for kings, for beasts, for the gods themselves. But now, every note belonged to her. Have you ever felt that shift? When suddenly a crowded room blurs, and only one face is clear? That is what she was to him: clarity, purpose, a melody he did not know he had been seeking. But who was she, beyond that meadow, beyond the gaze of Orpheus? The Greeks leave her mostly in shadow, and perhaps that is part of her mystery. Unlike Helen, whose beauty toppled cities, Eurydice is not remembered for destruction, but for presence. She is the embodiment of the fleeting, the delicate, the thing you do not notice until it is gone. And in that, she is profoundly human. Think of her life before. A nymph's days are spent in groves and riversides, in tending flowers, weaving garlands, singing with her sisters in voices that blended with birdsong. She would have known the textures of bark beneath her fingers, the cool shock of river water up to her ankles, the tickle of long grass at her calves. She would have laughed easily, her voice carrying on the wind like a lark's call. She would have knelt to tie herbs in bundles, to trace constellations in puddles, to listen to the hum of bees circling time. Eurydice was of the earth, deeply, rooted in cycles of season and growth. And perhaps that is why Orpheus loved her so. For while his gift was to move the world with song, hers was to simply be, to exist in quiet harmony with the life around her. His was the art of transformation, hers the art of presence. Together they were balance, the voice and the silence that answers it, the melody and the stillness that makes it audible. Now picture them side by side. He plays, his fingers coaxing music that bends trees. She sits beside him, a wreath of daisies in her lap, listening. Not demanding, not grasping, simply listening. And in her stillness, he finds more than in all the applause of kings. For what is music, if not something offered, something heard? Without her, his songs are echoes. With her, they are communion. The Greeks sometimes hinted that Eurydice was shy, hesitant, her beauty not the brazen kind that fills a hall, but the quiet kind that deepens when you linger. Have you known such beauty? The kind that does not startle, but stays. The kind you find yourself remembering in the dark, without meaning to. That was Eurydice. Yet do not mistake her gentleness for weakness. To live close to the earth is to know resilience. She had seen storms strip leaves from branches, and still trees bloom again. She had seen rivers flood and then calm, flowers wither and return. She carried within her that quiet endurance, the wisdom that life is not about spectacle, but about cycles. When Orpheus came to her with his tempest of sound, she met it with the steadiness of soil. And that steadiness became his anchor. There is a tenderness in imagining their early days together. He plays, she laughs. He plucks at strings to mimic her voice until she blushes and looks away. They walk along riverbanks, his hand brushing reeds, hers trailing in the water. They do not need words, for his music speaks, and her silence answers. And perhaps this is why her loss would wound so deeply. For to lose Eurydice is not only to lose a wife, a lover. It is to lose the listener, the witness, the one who gave his music meaning. Without her, his songs are hollow, as if the strings themselves remember her absence. But we are not yet at that part of the tale. For now, let us linger in her presence. Feel the cool shadow of an olive tree as she rests beneath it. Watch her hands weaving crowns of flowers for a festival, her fingers deft and sure. Hear her hum as she works, a tune so soft it might be mistaken for the wind. And if you listen closely, you will hear why Orpheus loved her more than any audience, more than even the gods' approval. For in her, he found not grandeur, but peace. And it is always peace we love most fiercely when it slips away. The meadow has changed. It is no longer a place of quiet glances and soft garlands woven in the grass. Now it is alive with voices, with the rustle of fabric and the tread of many feet. Torches flare though the sun is still bright, their smoke spiraling into the sky like signals to the gods. The air smells of honey cakes, of roasted lamb, of spilled wine soaking into the earth. Music rings out, but this time, not only from Orpheus' lyre. Flutes trill, drums beat, voices call, Yet all of it bends itself around the thread of his playing, for it is his gift that carries the day. Imagine being there. You are not a guest in stiff modern clothes, not an onlooker with a camera, but a villager, a cousin, a passing shepherd invited to witness something that feels larger than any ordinary union. You stand barefoot in the grass, holding a cup of sweet wine, and you watch as Orpheus, the singer of gods and men, takes the hand of Eurydice, the quiet nymph whose very presence has become his music. The Greeks did not treat weddings lightly. They were more than celebrations, they were bridges between worlds. To marry was to bind families, to bind oaths, to bind mortal life to divine blessing. And in this wedding, the blessings overflow. Calliope, the muse, is there, Orpheus' own mother, her presence radiant though unseen by most. Apollo, too, is said to have looked on, proud of the pupil whose fingers had made his lyre sing with such clarity. Even Dionysus, wild god of revelry, may have smiled on the feast, for the wine flowed freely and the dancing spiraled long into the night. But above all, there is hope. Hope shines in every detail. The garlands draped across the altar, fresh with lilies and ivy. The laughter of Eurydice's companions as they crown her hair with flowers. The hush that falls when she steps forward, her white robe trailing over the grass, her eyes lowered not in fear but in reverence for the moment. Orpheus watches her as though no one else exists, and perhaps, for him, no one does. Pause for a moment and feel it. The warmth of the sun on your shoulders, the taste of wine sharp and sweet on your tongue, the murmur of anticipation as vows are spoken. These are not written vows, not contracts signed with ink, but living words carried by breath, spoken before gods, before ancestors, before the land itself. Orpheus promises not wealth, not conquest, but devotion. Eurydice answers not with fanfare, but with the quiet strength of her gaze. And when they are bound, when hands are joined with woven cords, the meadow erupts, music, laughter, dancing that churns the grass into a living floor. You can almost hear the steps, sandals pounding, bare feet striking in rhythm. You can almost smell the feast, figs bursting with ripeness, bread torn and shared, roasted meats sizzling. Children chase each other between the dancers, their laughter weaving in and out of the pipe's high notes. Old women clap their hands, their faces soft with memory. Young men lift their cups high, shouting Orpheus' name, though all know it is Eurydice who has transformed him more deeply than any god ever could. And through it all he plays. His lyre is never silent, each note rising like a blessing over the scene. Even the animals gather, doves circling in the air, deer edging close from the forest, tamed not by magic but by harmony. For this is what Orpheus brings, not conquest, not dominion, but harmony. And on this day, it feels unbreakable. But as you watch, as you drink in the joy of it, do you feel the faintest chill beneath it all? The Greeks always knew joy and sorrow were twined. No feast was ever free of shadow, no laughter ever without echo. For the gods are watchful, and fate listens even when no one speaks her name. Somewhere in the grass, a serpent coils unseen. Somewhere in the air, a silence waits its turn. Yet let us not rush there. Stay here, in this moment of radiance. Watch as Orpheus and Eurydice dance together for the first time as husband and wife. Their steps are not grand, not rehearsed, but natural, two currents flowing into one. He looks at her, and the world tilts. She smiles at him, and the air seems lighter. Around them, the crowd spins faster, drunk with joy, caught up in the certainty that this union is blessed beyond all others. This is the cruel beauty of the tale, that it begins with such hope, such certainty. That all who were there must have whispered, "Surely the gods favor them." That Orpheus himself must have believed his music strong enough to carry them through any shadow. That Eurydice must have felt her future stretching before her like an endless summer day. Hold this image close, for it will not last. The garlands will wither, the torches will gutter out, the meadow will fall silent. But for now, it is enough to stand in the warmth of it, to let the hope soak into you as it did into them. For without hope, there is no tragedy. And without joy, there is no song worth mourning. The wedding has passed, and morning has returned. The meadow where Eurydice once walked is quiet again, but not empty. She wanders there, perhaps with other nymphs, perhaps alone, her robe brushing the tips of wild flowers still heavy with dew. The sun spills across the fields, and the air is filled with the small, ordinary sounds of life, the hum of bees, the flutter of wings, the rustle of grass. It is a morning that feels so innocent, so ordinary, you would never suspect what waits beneath it. She steps lightly, her bare feet cool against the earth. She bends to gather herbs, their scent sharp between her fingers. Perhaps she hums softly, the melody Orpheus once played for her. Perhaps she pauses to glance at the stream, her reflection rippling beside the sky. Nothing in her face shows fear. Nothing hints at what is about to happen. And then movement. Quick, silent, hidden in the grass. A flicker, a coil, a glint of scales in sunlight. The snake. It does not announce itself with a hiss, does not rear like in later tales. It is sudden, a strike, a snap, a sting before thought. She gasps, her bundle of herbs scattering. Her hand flies to her ankle, where two small punctures already darken with venom. Imagine her shock, not terror at first, but disbelief. For death is always imagined as something distant, something for another day. She steadies herself, tries to step back, but her legs falter. The venom is swift, racing through her veins like fire and ice. Her breath quickens, her vision blurs. The meadow tilts, the blue sky suddenly heavy, the hum of bees distant and strange. She reaches out, for balance, for help, but no one is there. Only grass, bending beneath her weight as she collapses. Pause here. Do you feel the cruelty? That such a life, so gentle, so filled with promise, should be ended by something so small, so silent? A wedding feast one day, a snake's bite the next. This was the way the Greeks understood fate. Not as fair, not as just, but as implacable. Destiny does not roar, it whispers. It waits in the grass, patient, until the moment is right. Her sisters, the other nymphs, may have found her. They may have cried out, their voices sharp with panic, gathering around her still form. Or perhaps it was Orpheus who came, too late, his lyre still in his hands, his heart thundering as he saw her pale face against the meadow's green. However it happened, the end was the same. Her lips parted, but no words came. Her eyes dimmed, as if a veil had fallen over them. The meadow that once carried her laughter now carried only silence. The poets tell it quickly. She was bitten by a serpent, and she died. But pause, linger. This was not just a line in a verse. This was a life cut short, a joy extinguished. Think of her hand, still clutching a broken stem of time. Think of the wreath of flowers she had worn at her wedding, now withered in the grass beside her. Think of the warmth leaving her skin, the stillness creeping in where once there was breath. And somewhere, beyond what mortals could see, her soul slipped away. The Greeks imagined death not as a sudden vanishing, but as a journey. She would have felt herself drawn downward, through unseen paths, into a realm where light grew dim. Shades gathered around her, murmuring, their faces pale and blurred. The air was cold, the ground misted with shadows. This was Hades' realm, and Eurydice had entered it, too soon, too young. Back above, in the world of sun and grass, Orpheus would learn. Can you picture it? Someone runs from the meadow, breathless, shouting his name. He turns, smiling still from the joy of their union, until he sees the face of the messenger. Until he hears the words. Until his lyre nearly slips from his hands. He runs, but the meadow gives him only her stillness, her silence. He kneels beside her, touches her cheek, calls her name again and again. But the only answer is the whisper of wind through reeds, the rustle of leaves, the faint hiss of the snake retreating unseen. The gods, it is said, wept at his cries. The mountains echoed them, the rivers stilled to listen. For his grief was not the grief of one man. It was the grief of every soul that has ever loved and lost, the grief of the human condition itself. To hold beauty one moment, and have it snatched away the next. To believe in forever and be shown how fragile forever truly is. The meadow is no longer bright. In memory, it is always shadowed now. The place of their love, of their vows, becomes the place of her death. And the snake, mindless, venomous, becomes the hand of fate itself. Do you feel the weight of it? That sudden collapse from joy into despair? That cruel reversal that gives the story its shape? Without it, there would be no descent into the underworld, no music that shook the heart of Hades. But with it, there is loss so sharp it cuts across centuries, across languages, across all who hear the tale. For we too know what it is to lose without reason, to face the silence of someone gone too soon. The Greeks did not soften the blow. They did not say, "She passed peacefully," or "She lived long and full." They said simply, "She was bitten by a snake, and she died." And in that bluntness lies the power. Death does not always explain itself. It arrives swift as a strike in the grass. And we, like Orpheus, are left stunned, shattered, reaching into silence. He kneels beside her still form, the meadow spinning around him. His fingers brush her hair, still warm with sunlight, but her lips do not part, her eyes do not flutter open. He calls her name once, twice, then again and again until his throat is raw, until the air itself seems to echo his plea. But the meadow gives no answer. The birds are silent, the river is hushed, the wind has stilled, as if the world itself recoils from his grief. At last, the truth begins to seep in. She is gone. Eurydice, whose laugh once braided itself into his music, whose quiet gaze steadied him, whose presence made every song complete, gone, taken not by war, nor by age, nor by the hand of a god, but by a snake in the grass. He clutches her to his chest, rocking as if the movement might coax life back into her. The herbs she gathered spill across the ground, their scent sharp and bitter in the air, mocking the sweetness of the wedding garlands still wilting nearby. And then, from his lips, sound breaks free. Not words, not shouts, but music. He takes up his lyre, his hands trembling, and he plays. The notes are fractured at first, scattered like tears, but they gather, swell, pour out of him in waves. It is not the music he once played for kings, nor the joyous strains of a wedding song. This is lament. Pure, unbroken, unbearable lament. Imagine hearing it. The strings quiver, each note carrying the weight of loss. It is not beautiful in the ordinary sense, not crafted to delight. It is raw, jagged, filled with the agony of a man who has seen his world collapse in an instant. Yet in that rawness lies a terrible beauty. For who can hear the cry of grief and not feel it echo in their own chest? The Greeks believed that such music had power not only to move hearts, but to move the very elements. And so it does. The trees lean inward, their leaves trembling with sorrow. The stones beneath him grow damp with tears not his own. Rivers pause, their currents stilled by the weight of his song. Even the birds in the sky wheel overhead, their wings silent, listening. It is said that all of nature wept with him, that even the gods in Olympus turned their faces away, unable to bear the purity of his grief. But grief is not a single note, it is a symphony. First comes denial, the frantic calling of her name, the refusal to let go. Then comes the raw wail, the tearing of the heart. And after, the silence. Days pass, though Orpheus does not mark them. He wanders the meadow, the forest, the riverside, carrying his lyre like a burden. His songs spread outward, carried on the wind, until the whole world seems caught in his mourning. Farmers pause in their fields, tears on their cheeks. Shepherds lean on their staffs, staring at the ground. Children cry without knowing why. Even the gods, immortal and unmoved by mortal concerns, find themselves shaken. Have you ever lost someone suddenly? Do you remember the way the world seemed unreal? Every sound too sharp or too dull, every face a blur, every breath too heavy? That was Orpheus. He moved through life as if behind a veil, his eyes hollow, his music the only way to bridge the chasm between what was and what is. But music, for all its power, could not bring her back. And so despair deepened. He withdrew from feasts, from companions, from every joy that had once filled him. His lyre sang only laments now, and though people came to hear, drawn by the haunting beauty of his sorrow, they left with heavy hearts, carrying tears instead of joy. The world itself seemed dimmer, as though his grief had spilled into its very fabric. Some stories say he cursed the gods, cried out against their cruelty. Others say he begged them, humbling himself before their altars. He poured libations, burned offerings, whispered prayers until his voice broke. But the heavens were silent. No god came down to undo the snake's strike, no goddess reached out to restore Eurydice. For even in myth, there are rules that bind gods and mortals alike. Death is final. Death is law. Yet Orpheus could not accept it. His despair was not passive. It was restless, knowing, searching. To live without her was no life at all. To sing without her listening was no song at all. His grief turned to resolve, a wild, impossible resolve. If the gods of Olympus would not help him, then he would go where few dared tread. He would follow her. Not in death, not yet, but in descent. He would walk into the underworld itself, and call her name until even Hades listened. This thought burned in him like a spark, and with each day of mourning it grew. The more he sang, the more he felt the walls of the world tremble, as though his music could reach even the shadows. And at last he knew, his despair would not end in silence. It would end in a journey, a descent, a song so pure it would pierce even death. But before that moment of resolve, let us remain here a while longer, in the hollow ache of his loss. For it is important not to rush past despair. It is the soil from which his courage will grow. He weeps beside her empty bed, his fingers clutching the linens that still carry her scent. He walks the paths they once walked together, now empty but for echoes of memory. He plays his lyre at twilight, when shadows lengthen and the air cools, and for a moment he almost feels her beside him, until the wind shifts, and he is alone again. And always, always, the meadow. He returns to it, drawn as if by chains. He kneels where she fell, touches the grass that bent beneath her, stares at the spot where her body lay. Sometimes he speaks aloud, as though she might answer. Sometimes he sits in silence, his lyre across his knees, the strings catching the faint breeze like whispers. This is despair, not only sorrow, but the endless circling of memory, the refusal to let go, the conviction that life cannot continue as it was. For Orpheus, it was both torment and fuel. Every tear carved him deeper, every note of lament hardened his resolve. He would not allow the story to end here, with a snake's bite and a meadow's silence. He would descend. He would sink to death itself. But that, my friend, belongs to the journey ahead. For now, we linger in his despair, letting it settle like a weight upon us. For without knowing the depth of his grief, we cannot understand the power of the choice he is about to make. The Greeks believed the underworld was not reached by sudden vanishing, but by passage. A journey. The soul did not blink out of existence, it traveled. Downward through caves, through cracks in the earth, through paths worn by the dead themselves. Orpheus knew this. He had heard it in stories, in hymns, in whispers around temple fires. And now, with Eurydice gone, he sought those paths with mortal feet. Imagine him setting out at dusk, when the sky bleeds gold into purple. His lyre is slung across his back, its strings glinting faintly in the last rays of light. His cloak hangs heavy, his face shadowed, his eyes fixed on nothing but the horizon. He does not look back. Behind him lie feasts he no longer attends, companions he no longer greets. songs he no longer sings. Before him lies silence, darkness, and perhaps, if the gods are merciful, Eurydice. The journey begins in the mortal world, through landscapes both familiar and strange. He walks through forests where the trees grow too thick, their branches clawing like hands. He crosses rivers whose waters reflect no stars. He enters caves where the air grows heavy, damp, where each breath tastes of earth and stone. Animals sense his passage. Wolves slink away, not daring to howl. Owls turn their heads but make no sound. Even the insects seem subdued, as if aware he is leaving the living behind. Step by step the air cools. The colors of the world drain. Grass pales to gray, rocks glimmer faintly as if dusted with ash. The silence deepens until the only sound is the steady beat of his footsteps and the faint vibration of strings when his lyre brushes against his side. It is not yet the underworld, but it is no longer the world he knew. He is in the threshold lands, the in-between. Here shadows gather. They do not speak, not yet, but they drift at the edges of his vision, watching. These are the restless dead, the unburied, the forgotten. Their forms are thin, as if smoke were given shape. Orpheus feels their longing press against him, longing for life, for warmth, for voices that remember their names. He lifts his lyre and plucks a single string. The note quivers in the dark, soft, hesitant. The shadows pause. He plays again, a melody rising, slow and mournful, carrying sorrow yet also solace. And the shadows draw near, not menacing but listening. They settle around him like an audience in a dim hall, their pale faces turned upward. For a moment, the in-between is filled with harmony, and the shadows sway as if remembering the rhythm of breath. This is the first test, though Orpheus may not know it. To enter the realm of the dead, one must not only walk but also be permitted. His music becomes his key. Where others would be lost in fear, he carries with him the one thing death itself cannot silence: song. The path continues. He comes to a chasm, wide and black, its depths unfathomable. The air here is colder still, smelling faintly of iron and decay. Across the chasm, a thin bridge of stone stretches, cracked and narrow, barely wide enough for his feet. He steps onto it, the rock groaning beneath his weight. Beneath him yawns the abyss, where shapes writhe far below, not shadows, but something deeper, older, nameless. He does not look down. He fixes his eyes ahead, his lyre steady in his hands, and plays a rhythm with each step, as if to measure his courage. The bridge holds. The abyss murmurs but does not claim him. Beyond the chasm, the land slopes downward into caverns where no light dwells. Here he feels the presence of the rivers, for in the Greek imagination, 5 rivers wound through the underworld: Styx, Acheron, Lethe, Phlegethon, Cocytus. Each with its own power, each carrying the souls of the dead deeper into silence. Orpheus hears them faintly now, a roar like distant thunder, a hiss like serpents, a murmur like voices long forgotten. The rivers are near. His journey is not hurried. It cannot be. For every step downward, the air grows heavier, pressing against his lungs. His limbs ache with a fatigue beyond the physical, a weariness of soul. Doubt whispers at him, what if she cannot be reached? What if she no longer remembers him? What if the gods forbid it? Yet still he goes on. For despair has given him nothing to lose, and love has given him everything to seek. He pauses at the mouth of a cavern where the path splits. One way slopes sharply, jagged rocks like teeth. The other winds gently, but the air reeks of sulfur. He does not know which to choose, but he closes his eyes and listens. And there, faint, almost hidden, he hears something like Eurydice's voice. Or perhaps it is only memory. Still, he follows it, his feet steady, his lyre ready. Imagine the silence around him now. No bird, no wind, no living thing. Only stone, water, shadow. Yet his song persists. He plays not only for courage but for direction. Each note carries him further, as if the underworld itself bends slightly to the sound, allowing him passage. And so Orpheus walks deeper, guided by music, carrying hope like a flickering flame through the dark. Soon, he will reach the banks of the Styx. Soon, he will face the ferryman who guards the crossing. But for now, let us remain here, in the threshold lands, where the world of the living fades and the realm of the dead begins, where one man's love drives him downward into silence with nothing but a lyre between him and eternity. The cavern widens, and before him lies the Styx. Its waters are black, not with mud but with something deeper, as though all the grief of the world has been poured into it drop by drop. The surface gleams faintly, catching a dim glow from nowhere and everywhere, yet no stars reflect upon it. The air reeks of damp stone and something bitter, metallic, almost like blood. It is said that the gods themselves swore oaths by this river, for to break a vow sworn on Styx was to be bound by death's own law. Such was its power. Along the shore, shades gather in silence. They drift like mist, waiting, patient, each one clutching a faint memory of life, a gesture, a word, a face. Their eyes are hollow, yet they lean forward slightly, drawn by the possibility of passage. For the Styx is not crossed by swimming. Its current is too heavy, its water too poisoned. Only one way leads across, Charon's boat. And there he is. A figure hunched in the gloom, gaunt as bone, robed in tattered cloth that seems woven from the night itself. His eyes are deep-set, glinting faintly, as though two coals smolder in his skull. In his hand he holds a pole, worn smooth from centuries of guiding the dead. His boat waits beside him, a narrow craft of dark wood, warped and old yet unbroken, as eternal as the task it serves. Charon is no kindly guide. He does not speak to comfort, does not smile, does not gesture with warmth. He is duty embodied, the inevitability of passage. The dead come, and he ferries them across. That is all. No joy, no malice, only the endless rhythm of his work. The shades press forward, some holding out coins, the obels buried with them by their kin, payment for the crossing. Those without coins linger on the bank, restless, condemned to wander. This was why the Greeks buried their dead with offerings. Without them, the soul could not cross. Orpheus watches as one by one, shades climb into the boat, silent, obedient. Charon guides them across, his pole dipping into water that makes no sound. When he returns, more souls drift forward. And then Orpheus steps into view. Unlike the shades, his body casts shadow. Unlike them, he breathes. His eyes hold not emptiness but fire. At once, Charon halts. His gaze fixes on the living man, and the cavern stills. For this is no place for the living. Charon's voice, when it comes, is low and rough, like stone dragged across stone. Mortal, he says, though the word sounds more like a condemnation than a description. You do not belong here. Orpheus does not answer with words at first. He raises his lyre. His fingers brush the strings, coaxing forth a sound that trembles in the heavy air. It begins softly, a melody that flows like the river itself, deep and slow, resonant. It does not command, it does not plead. It simply is, sorrow shaped into music, love woven into sound. The shades turn toward it, their hollow eyes glimmering faintly, as though remembering something long lost. They drift closer, gathering not at the boat now but around Orpheus, drawn like moths to flame. Charon shifts, his grip tightening on the pole. He has seen kings, heroes, even gods come and go, but this music, unsettles him. It presses against the silence of the underworld like light against a shuttered window. And then Orpheus sings. His voice rises, carrying words that are not mere words but prayer, plea, promise. He sings of Eurydice, her laughter in the fields, her hand in his, the way the world grew whole in her presence. He sings of loss, of a snake's sudden strike, of the emptiness that has devoured him since. He does not command Charon. He does not defy him. He offers only truth, naked and raw. The ferryman listens, though his face does not change. His eyes remain shadowed, his mouth a thin line. Yet the music weaves around him, into him, even into the dark wood of the boat itself, which creaks as if remembering a time before sorrow. The river seems to pause, its current slowing, as though even the Styx itself bends an ear. At last, Charon speaks again. No mortal may pass. The words are the same, yet his voice is softer, less stone, more echo. Orpheus does not lower his lyre. He plays on, each note like a drop of light falling into the dark. The shades sway, some weeping without tears. The cavern itself feels changed, as though grief has become something larger, not despair, but devotion. Charon lifts his pole. His movements are slow, reluctant, as though he resists what he already knows he will do. He steps aside, gesturing toward the boat. His eyes narrow, but there is no fury in them, only a strange weariness. Enter, he says, the word heavy as a stone cast into still water. But know this, no coin pays your way. Only your song. And your song has bought you passage. Orpheus bows his head, not in triumph but in gratitude. He steps into the boat, the wood cold beneath his feet. The shades press closer, yearning, but Charon raises his hand and they halt, silent once more. With a slow push of the pole, the boat drifts from the shore, carrying Orpheus out across waters black as sorrow, endless as night. Imagine the silence of that crossing. The river is still but for the faint ripple of the pole. The cavern walls are distant, veiled in mist. Above, no stars. Around, no sound but the faint creak of wood and the soft hum of Orpheus' strings as his fingers move almost unconsciously, keeping fear at bay. Charon says nothing, his eyes fixed on the far shore, his face unreadable. But perhaps, in some hidden corner of his ancient heart, a fragment of the song remains. And so Orpheus, living among the dead, crosses the Styx. The first true threshold is behind him. Ahead lie darker tests still, Cerberus, the hound, the halls of Hades and Persephone, the plea that will determine all. But none of it would be possible without this moment, when music bought what no coin could, and love carried a mortal across the river of death. The air is thicker here, heavy with the breath of the dead. It carries the scent of ash, of damp earth, of things buried too long. Shadows move in clusters, pale and wavering, drifting along paths that lead deeper still. Some whisper faintly, words too old to be understood. Others are silent, their faces blurred by time. The cavern walls sweat moisture that drips in steady rhythms, like the slow beat of a funereal drum. Orpheus walks carefully. His feet echo against the stone, each step a reminder that he is alive among the lifeless. The shades glance at him, drawn by the warmth of his breath, the sound of his heart, but none touch him. His presence is strange here, as if a spark of fire had been carried into a cave long sealed. And that spark is dangerous, for the underworld has guardians. At first, he hears only the low rumble, like thunder muffled deep within the earth. Then the sound sharpens into growl. Ahead, in the gloom, 2 eyes ignite, then 4, then 6. Cerberus, the hound of Hades. His body is massive, muscles rippling beneath shadow-black fur, claws carving gouges into the stone. 3 heads rise from his shoulders, each snarling, each dripping fangs that gleam faintly in the darkness. His tail whips behind him, not fur but serpent, coiling and hissing in harmony with the growls. He blocks the path entirely. Behind him lies the deeper underworld, the asphodel fields, the halls of judgment, the throne of Hades and Persephone. No mortal passes unless Cerberus allows it. And Cerberus allows nothing. Orpheus freezes, but only for a moment. Fear trembles in his chest, yet his hands do not falter. He raises his lyre. The strings quiver beneath his touch, and sound spills forth, soft at first, then fuller, richer. It is not battle music. It is not command. It is lullaby. Close your eyes and hear it. A melody low and slow, like the rocking of a cradle, like the hush of wind through branches at dusk. Notes that soothe rather than stir, that beckon rather than resist. The cavern itself seems to lean closer, its echoes softened, its dripping slowed. Cerberus growls again, the sound deep enough to shake the walls. His middle head lunges forward, teeth bared, breath hot and foul. But the music winds around him, weaving into the air, curling into his ears. The growl falters. The second head lifts, ears twitching. The third tilts slightly, confused. Orpheus plays on, his fingers steady, his heart pounding but his voice calm as he hums with the strings. And then, the impossible happens. The serpent tail lowers, coiling against the ground. The middle head yawns, not in rage but in weariness. The second head blinks, slowly, as though heavy with sudden drowsiness. The third lowers to the ground, resting its chin upon massive paws. One by one, the three heads close their eyes. The hound of the underworld, whose growls have turned countless mortals to flight, lies down before Orpheus like a hound beside its master. The shades gasp, a sound like the rustling of dead leaves. Even they are astonished. Never before has Cerberus yielded, never before has the gate been opened by music instead of fear. Yet here he lies, asleep, his breaths deep and even, his massive chest rising and falling in rhythm with the lullaby still drifting from Orpheus' lyre. Imagine the sight. A cavern vast and dark, shadows trembling, stone cold and wet. And in its center, a beast of nightmares curled into slumber, lulled by the song of one man with a lyre. It is the triumph of beauty over terror, harmony over chaos, love over death's own sentinel. But Orpheus does not gloat. He does not smile, does not pause. His music continues, softer now, to keep the hound in sleep. He steps past slowly, his feet careful, his eyes never leaving the beast. The shades follow at a distance, murmuring, their faces awed. In his music they hear what they have lost, rest, peace, the gentleness that no longer belongs to them. Deeper and deeper he goes, the song winding with him. The darkness thickens, yet the music holds it at bay. The shades press close, their hollow forms lit faintly by the glow of his song. Some weep, though no tears fall. Others raise their heads as if remembering names they had forgotten. Orpheus gives them what no god of the underworld offers: comfort. This is why the Greeks told his story. Not because he slew monsters, not because he conquered armies, but because his song reached where swords could not. In the darkness, where no light shines, he brought gentleness. In the halls of death, he carried life. And yet, even as Cerberus sleeps, as shadows follow, as the music echoes through stone and silence, the air grows colder. Ahead lies not mere gloom, but sovereignty. For beyond these caverns is the throne of Hades and Persephone, the rulers of the dead. And they are not so easily soothed. Still, Orpheus walks on. His song has carried him past the ferryman, past the hound. It has lulled shadows and softened stone. It is his only weapon, his only shield, his only prayer. And though despair still gnaws at him, though grief still shadows every note, his love gives him strength enough to keep playing. For Eurydice waits, somewhere in the depths of this silence. The path narrows, then widens again into a vast hall carved from black stone. Its ceiling is lost in darkness, too high for even the faintest echo to return. Torches burn along the walls, their flames strange and dim, casting more shadow than light. The air tastes of iron and smoke, and beneath it, something sweeter yet more unsettling, the faint perfume of asphodel blossoms, flowers of the dead. Shades crowd the edges, keeping their distance. They do not speak. They do not need to. The stillness itself is their chorus. All eyes, hollow, blurred, endless, turn toward the figure walking into the hall. A mortal. Alive. His lyre clutched in his hands, its strings glowing faintly as though carrying a fragment of sunlight smuggled into this eternal night. At the far end, on a throne of obsidian, sits Hades. His presence is not the wild fury of Zeus' thunder, nor the proud gleam of Apollo's radiance. He is stillness made flesh. His robes are black as void, his face stern and pale, his eyes dark wells where no reflection lingers. In his hand he holds no scepter, no weapon, for he needs none. His power is not in what he brandishes, but in what he is, inevitability. Death itself, robed in the dignity of eternity. Beside him sits Persephone. Where Hades is shadow, she is twilight, softer, but no less commanding. Her robes are woven with threads of green and silver, and in her hair glimmers the faint shimmer of pomegranate seeds, bright as drops of blood. Her face is serene, but her eyes hold depths both tender and sorrowful. For she is queen not only of the underworld but also of spring, torn forever between the world above and this shadowed realm. Imagine the sight, these two figures side by side, sovereigns of silence. Around them, courtiers of the dead drift like mist, shades who once were kings, warriors, poets. All gaze upon the lone mortal who dares approach. Orpheus bows low. His hands tremble, but not with fear alone. With longing. With hope so fragile it could break beneath the weight of the moment. He raises his lyre. No words yet. Only music. The first notes quiver in the air, rising uncertainly, then gathering strength. He plays not the lullaby of Cerberus, not the sorrow of the Styx, but something new, a song shaped for gods, for rulers, for those who hold dominion over death itself. His fingers move swiftly, his voice rises with the strings, and the hall fills with sound. He sings of Eurydice, of the meadow where they met, the sunlight on her hair, the laughter in her voice. He sings of their wedding, torches flaring, garlands bright, the promise of joy stretching before them. He sings of the snake, the sudden bite, the breath that left her lips before its time. His voice cracks, but he does not falter. He sings of his grief, the hollow nights, the endless laments, the way his music has turned to ashes without her. And then he sings his plea. Not as demand, not as command, but as prayer. Great Hades, stern Persephone, rulers of all beneath the earth, I come not to defy your law, nor to steal from your dominion. I come with empty hands, with only song. I beg not for myself, but for her. For Eurydice, whose life was taken too soon, whose joy was cut short, whose laughter the world still aches to hear. Grant her back to me. Let her walk once more in sunlight, if only for a time. If not for me, then for the music that even now fills your halls. For if love and song hold no power here, then what hope is left for any soul? The hall is silent. His voice fades, but its echoes linger. Even the torches seem to lean forward, their flames bending toward the sound. The shades stand utterly still, their blurred faces softened as though remembering lives long past. And then, something remarkable. The sternness of Hades' gaze shifts, if only slightly. Not softened, but stilled, as though the immovable has been touched. Persephone's eyes glisten faintly, as though a tear almost forms. For she knows the pain of separation. She knows what it is to be torn from love, to be bound by law. In Orpheus' song, she hears her own story. Hades speaks at last. His voice is deep, resonant, like the echo of stones struck in a cavern. Mortal, he says, you sing with truth. Your love is fierce, your grief undeniable. Yet know this, no soul returns from here. The dead are ours, bound by law older than gods themselves. To unmake that law would unmake the order of the world. Orpheus lowers his head. But he does not still his hands. His lyre continues to whisper, a soft counterpoint to Hades' words. And Persephone leans closer to her husband, her voice low but clear. But there are times, she says, when even law may bend. He has not come with pride. He has not come with arms. He has come with song, and song has moved even my heart. Will you deny him utterly, when love is the only gift he carries? The hall holds its breath. The shades lean forward. Orpheus' fingers still move, his music soft as a heartbeat, a thread tying him to hope. Hades' eyes remain dark, unreadable. And yet, for the first time in all the tale, the silence of the underworld seems to wait for his answer. Hades speaks first. His voice is steady, deep, without anger, yet with the gravity of one who rarely concedes. Orpheus, he says, the name echoing through the cavern like a tolling bell. Your song has reached even me. I, who have heard countless cries of grief, countless pleas from those who come here unwilling, I felt my heart stir as you played. That is no small feat. His words fall like stone, yet beneath them lies something unthinkable, acknowledgement. Hades, immovable lord of the underworld, has been moved. The shades murmur, their whispers like dry leaves stirred by wind. Persephone leans slightly forward, her eyes still fixed on Orpheus, her lips parted as though ready to speak again. But Hades raises a hand, and silence deepens. The dead belong to me. They cannot simply be taken back. To allow one to return is to unbind the order that has held since the beginning. Yet your song is truth, and your grief is a weight even I cannot ignore. For this reason, and for this reason alone, I will grant you what no mortal has been granted. Orpheus' breath catches, his fingers still on the strings. The shades lean closer. Even Persephone's eyes brighten faintly, as if light has entered them. Hades continues, Eurydice shall follow you back to the realm of the living. She will rise, shadow though she is, and walk behind you along the same path by which you came. But hear this, mortal, there is one condition, one rule. As you lead her upward, you must not look back. Not once. Not until you both stand beneath the sun. Should you turn, should your eyes fall upon her before you have reached the world of light, she will vanish from you forever. This is the law, and there will be no second chance. The words fall like iron. They echo across the hall, into the bones of the earth. The shades murmur again, some in awe, some in sorrow. For they know what he is asking. Not merely patience. Not merely trust. But the surrender of certainty itself. Orpheus lowers his head. He understands. To look back is to seek assurance, to demand proof. But love, Hades says, must walk blind. To doubt is to lose. To believe without seeing, that is the trial. Persephone's voice rises, softer but piercing, like a silver thread woven through the darkness. Take care, Orpheus, she says. What my husband grants, he grants only once. Trust is your only guide. Do not falter. Her eyes linger on him with something almost maternal, almost sorrowful. She, too, knows the weight of trust, forced each year to leave her mother, Demeter, and descend to Hades' side, trusting the seasons to return her again. Orpheus swallows hard. His hands clutch the lyre to his chest as if to steady his heart. I accept, he whispers. His voice trembles, but his resolve is clear. If trust is the price, I will pay it. If silence is required, I will endure it. Only let her walk with me once more. Hades inclines his head, the barest nod, but it is enough. The torches flare briefly, though their light is pale. From the shadows, Eurydice emerges. At first she is only a wisp, a pale form gliding across the stone. Then, as she draws nearer, she takes shape, slender, veiled in mist, her face faint as though painted in water. She does not speak, but her eyes, when they meet Orpheus, carry all the longing of the meadow where they first walked, all the promise of the wedding, all the sorrow of the snake's bite. She reaches out a hand, but stops short, as though held back by the law of the place. Orpheus trembles. His body leans toward her, aching to touch, to hold, to speak. But he remembers the condition. He lowers his eyes. He breathes once, twice. Then he turns, facing the path upward. Behind him, he hears her steps, faint, hesitant, but real. She is there. The hall is still. Hades leans back into shadow, his face unreadable once more. Persephone watches with quiet pity, her hand resting lightly upon her husband's arm. The shades bow their heads, as though in reverence to this fragile bargain. And Orpheus walks. Step by step, he leads her away from the throne of death. Step by step, he carries not only his lyre, but the weight of law, of love, of trust that cannot falter. Behind him, Eurydice follows, silent as a shadow, fragile as mist. This is the god's condition, not simply to return her, but to test the very core of his devotion. For love that cannot trust is no love at all. And the gods, stern as they are, demand nothing less than its truest form. The hall of Hades fades behind him. The thrones of shadow, the gaze of Persephone, the stern stillness of Hades, all retreat into the darkness. Ahead lies the winding road he once descended, now stretched before him in reverse. Yet everything feels different. The path downward had been filled with purpose, driven by despair. The path upward is filled with fear, not of failure in song, but of faltering in faith. Orpheus walks slowly, each step deliberate. His lyre is cradled in his hands, but he does not play. The god's condition forbids distraction. Every note, every glance, every gesture must be forward. Behind him, he hears her. Soft steps, faint as the fall of leaves. They do not echo as his do, for she is not yet fully flesh, not yet returned. She is shadow still, caught between worlds. He longs to turn, to see her face, to reassure himself that she is truly there. But he does not. He cannot. The underworld is not merciful. The path is long, winding, filled with silence so deep it presses against the heart. Shadows drift beside him, watching with empty eyes. They whisper faintly, their words curling like smoke. "Is she truly there?" they murmur. "Do you not doubt? Do you not ache to look?" Their voices are thin, but they pierce like needles. Orpheus clenches his teeth, keeps walking. His hands grip the lyre until his knuckles whiten. The path steepens. Stone gives way to gravel that crunches beneath his sandals. Each sound is loud, too loud, as if daring him to turn, to share the noise with her. But he keeps his eyes fixed ahead. In his chest, doubt gnaws. What if it is a trick? What if the gods mocked him, letting him believe she follows when in truth she has been left behind? What if her steps are only echoes, shadows imitating her presence? He shakes his head, as though to drive the thoughts away. He breathes deeply, forcing air into his lungs. He remembers Persephone's eyes, soft with pity, and Hades' words heavy with law. They would not lie. They would not waste his song on falsehood. She is there. She must be. Still, the silence grows heavier. He longs for her voice, even a whisper. But Eurydice is bound by the condition. She cannot speak, cannot call his name, cannot reach out. She must follow in silence, and he must lead in trust. It is the cruelest test of all, love denied its simplest reassurance. The cavern narrows, its walls pressing close. The ceiling lowers, dripping cold water onto his shoulders. His breath fogs before him, and the path twists upward in jagged turns. Each time he climbs the slope, his heart leaps, thinking the world above is near. Each time, he finds only another stretch of shadow. Behind him, her steps persist, soft, steady, unbearably faint. At times, he slows his pace, listening. Yes, there it is. A sound like the brushing of silk against stone. She is there. And yet, every pause brings fresh temptation. His body aches to turn, to see, to confirm. He whispers to himself, words no louder than breath. Not yet! Not yet! The Greeks understood this trial deeply. For what is faith but walking forward without proof? What is love but trusting in what you cannot hold? Orpheus embodies this truth. His journey upward is not measured in miles, but in heartbeats, each one a test. At last, he reaches the cavern where Cerberus lies. The hound still sleeps, curled in shadow, his breath slow, lulled by the memory of Orpheus' song. The serpent tail twitches faintly, but the three heads rest upon their paws. Orpheus walks past, silent, cautious, never turning. Behind him, her steps falter, only slightly, but enough to tighten his chest. What if the hound wakes? What if she stumbles? His body jerks, almost turning. Almost. But he forces himself forward, hands trembling, eyes fixed on the path. Past the hound, he reaches the banks of the Styx. The river gleams black as before, endless and still. Charon waits, his boat poised. His eyes narrow at the sight of Orpheus returning, Eurydice behind him, though unseen. Yet he says nothing. He gestures to the boat, and Orpheus steps in. The wood creaks under his weight. Behind him, there is no sound, no step, no shift. Doubt stabs him. Did she follow onto the boat? Did she remain on the shore? The silence is unbearable. He nearly turns, nearly breaks. But Charon's eyes catch his, cold and knowing. Orpheus lowers his gaze. He grips his lyre. He waits. The boat drifts. The river makes no sound. Charon pulls them across with steady strokes. Orpheus stares forward into mist. His heart pounds so loudly he fears it will burst. Then, faintly, he hears it, a sigh, a whisper of cloth brushing wood. She is there. She is. He closes his eyes, fighting tears. The far shore rises. The boat grates against stone. Orpheus steps off, his legs unsteady. The path climbs sharply now, steep and narrow, a tunnel that winds upward toward light. The air grows less heavy. The stone feels warmer beneath his feet. He can almost taste the air of the living. He climbs faster, his breath ragged, sweat on his brow. Behind him, still, the faint sound of steps. The tunnel bends, and ahead, light. Pale at first, then stronger, a glow that spills into the darkness like water. His heart surges. Sunlight. The world above. He is so close. Only a few steps more, and she will be his again. Only a few steps, and the silence will end. But with every step nearer, the temptation grows sharper. He aches to see her face bathed in the returning light, to know she is not a dream, not a shade, but truly there. The condition rings in his mind: do not turn, do not look, not until you both stand beneath the sun. Yet his heart rages against it. What if she falters in the final steps? What if she is too weak, too faint, too far behind? What if the gods tricked him, and the footsteps were only echoes? He grips his lyre so tightly his fingers ache. He fixes his eyes on the light, dazzling now, bright as hope itself. He takes one more step, then another. The threshold is near. His body trembles with both longing and fear. Behind him, her steps pause, or does he only imagine it? The silence is too deep, too cruel. He cannot know. He cannot bear it. And so he walks on, each step a prayer, each breath a battle. The path back is almost done. The light of life waits ahead. But love, fragile and fierce, is heavy with longing, and longing is the sharpest test of all. The tunnel bends one final time, and daylight pours into the darkness. It is not the pale glow of torches, not the eerie shimmer of the underworld's fire, but true sunlight, golden, warm, alive. Orpheus squints against its brilliance. His heart races. He has made it. He has led her from the depths, step by step, note by note, breath by breath. In a few more strides, they will both stand beneath the open sky. The air changes. It smells of grass again, faint but real. It carries the whisper of wind, cool and free. His chest tightens with joy. He wants to laugh, to sing, to cry out in triumph. But he remembers, not yet. Not until they are both beyond the threshold. Behind him, her steps falter. Just slightly, just enough for his body to tense. His mind seizes the thought, is she stumbling? Is she fading? He cannot see. He cannot know. His heart pounds louder than the silence, louder than the world. Doubt coils in him like a serpent, hissing with every beat, what if she is not there? What if you have been walking alone? He forces his gaze ahead, but the thought grows unbearable. He hears again Hades' words, do not look back, not until both stand in the light. He hears Persephone's voice, trust is your only guide. But trust feels like madness. His love is too fierce, his fear too sharp. To walk blind, with her steps so faint, feels like walking the edge of a blade. Another step. The light widens. Another step. The shadows thin. His body trembles with the effort of restraint. He grips his lyre so tightly the strings hum against his chest. One more step. And then silence. No footfall. No whisper. Nothing. He cannot bear it. His love overwhelms his resolve. His longing erupts like a cry too long suppressed. He turns. It is only an instant, no more than a heartbeat. But in that instant, all is lost. She is there. Eurydice. Pale and fragile, her eyes wide, her arms reaching toward him. For one breath of time, they meet, his gaze devouring her face, her gaze filled with love and sorrow mingled. She is beautiful even in shadow, beautiful even in the half-light. For one heartbeat, hope seems real. And then, she vanishes. Not slowly, not gently. She is yanked back as if by unseen hands, her form unraveling like smoke, her cry cut short. Her fingers slip from the air, her eyes dissolve into shadow, her body pulled downward into the dark. The silence rushes back, crueler than ever. The tunnel echoes with emptiness. She is gone. Forever. Orpheus staggers forward, his hand outstretched, his lyre clattering against the stone. He calls her name, again and again, his voice breaking, his throat raw. But there is no answer. Only the fading whisper of her presence, fading like a dream upon waking. He rushes toward the light, but it is too late. The threshold is behind him now, and she did not cross. He stumbles into the world above alone. The sun blazes overhead, bright and merciless. The grass bends in the wind. The air is warm, alive, mocking him with all the things she will never feel again. He falls to his knees. His hands clutch at the earth, tearing handfuls of grass, as though he might pull her from the soil itself. His body shakes with sobs, each one a knife driven deeper into his chest. He has lost her twice. Once to death, once to his own weakness. And this loss is sharper than the first, because it was his fault. His doubt. His glance. His love, too fragile to endure silence. The god's condition has been fulfilled. He turned. And so she is gone. Not for a season, not for a trial, but forever. No second chance will be given. The Greeks knew this pain. They knew that longing often undoes us, that love is both strength and weakness. They knew that in the moment of greatest triumph, the smallest falter can bring ruin. And they wove that truth into Orpheus' story, so that we, too, would feel it, the sharp ache of a love lost not by fate alone, but by a single, human mistake. Imagine him there, kneeling at the threshold. The sunlight warms his skin, but his heart is frozen. The meadow waits beyond, filled with flowers and birdsong, but he cannot see it. His eyes are fixed only on the darkness behind, where her presence has vanished. He calls again, softer now, hoarse and hollow. Eurydice. No answer. He whispers it once more, a breath, a prayer. Still nothing. And so he sits in the sunlight, alone. His lyre rests in his lap, silent. His fingers twitch, but no song comes. For what music can rise from a heart so shattered? This is the fatal moment. Not only her vanishing, but the silence that follows. The silence of absence, of love undone by its own longing. A silence heavier than the stones of Hades' hall, colder than the waters of Styx, more final than the hiss of the snake. It is the silence we all know, the silence of loss that will not be undone. And Orpheus, singer of gods and men, tamer of beasts, softener of death itself, is left with nothing but that silence. He does not rise. Hours pass, perhaps days, though he no longer counts them. He stays at the threshold, the very place where her steps dissolved, as if by remaining there he might still hear her, might still feel the brush of her presence. His fingers hover over the strings of his lyre but refuse to play. To shape music from this silence feels impossible. To sing joy feels obscene. Even lament feels too small. When at last he stirs, he is not healed. He is hollow. He wanders from the cave into the world of sunlight, but it no longer feels like home. The brightness blinds him, the warmth burns. Where once fields were vibrant with color, now they appear faded, as if drained by sorrow. Every sound mocks him, birdsong sharp as knives, laughter of children cutting deep, the hum of bees reminding him of the meadow where she fell. And so he sings again, but these are no longer the laments that move the gods. They are fractured, broken things, filled with dissonance. The notes rise, but they fall too quickly, collapsing into silence. He walks through forests, through villages, through fields, singing to no one and everyone. People gather, drawn by the sound, but they leave with tears. They whisper that his music is no longer of this world, that it carries the weight of shadows, that to hear it is to glimpse the underworld itself. The animals still come to him, wolves that should prowl, deer that should flee. But even they lower their heads, ears drooping, eyes glistening as though they too grieve. Rivers slow, trees bow, stones seem to tremble. Nature itself joins his mourning. Yet none of it consoles him. For every note, every tear, every bowed head only reminds him of what he has lost, what he himself has undone. This second loss is heavier than the first. When the snake struck, he could rage at fate, at chance, at the gods for their indifference. But now the blame rests in his own hands. He sees her face each night in memory, not in joy, not in life, but in the instant she vanished, her eyes wide with sorrow as she was torn away. He hears her silence behind him, feels again the moment when her steps ceased, remembers the madness that drove him to turn. That glance becomes a wound that will not close. Have you known such loss? The kind sharpened by regret, by the knowledge that if you had only acted differently, things might have been saved? That is Orpheus now. His grief is no longer passive, but poisonous, feeding on him from within. He withdraws from companions, from feasts, from every hint of joy. Where once his music had drawn people in, now he flees their company. He cannot bear their comfort, their pity, their questions. He belongs to silence and shadow. The Greeks tell us he wandered far, through Thrace, through lonely hills and dark forests. He refused the love of others, refused the companionship of women, refused the chance to begin again. His heart was bound only to Eurydice, and to her absence. Some say he turned away from all love thereafter, devoting himself only to memory. Others say he cursed love itself, unable to bear the wound it left in him. Whatever the tale, the truth is clear. Orpheus was a man broken, carrying his loss like a cloak that could not be shed. His lyre, once the joy of gods and men, became an instrument of mourning. Its strings sang only sorrow now, melodies so haunting that even the stars were said to weep. The Greeks imagined constellations bending closer, straining to hear. They said the very earth echoed him, valleys carrying his song long after he had passed. His music outlived his steps, lingering like a ghost, a reminder of love lost and trust undone. But grief has no end point. It circles, it spirals, it deepens. Orpheus' loss once more was not a single moment. but a life stretched thin beneath its weight. Each morning he woke and felt the absence beside him. Each evening he sang her name into the twilight, hoping the night might carry it to her. Each step he took on earth felt hollow, for he had already walked its deepest shadow. And yet, for all its pain, his story endured. For the Greeks, Orpheus' failure was not merely tragedy. It was recognition. They, too, knew the fragility of human resolve, the sharpness of longing, the weight of regret. To tell of his loss was to tell of their own. To weep with him was to weep for themselves. And so the tale of his second loss, harsher, sharper than the first, became one of the most enduring laments in human memory. Picture him one last time, wandering through a twilight forest. His lyre rests against his chest, his head bowed. The trees lean close, listening, their branches trembling with each note. His voice rises, soft, breaking, carrying Eurydice's name into the fading light. And though she does not answer, though the silence remains, the sound lingers, echoing across valleys, across time, across every heart that has ever known the pain of losing twice. Orpheus wandered. The Greeks said he roamed the lands of Thrace, a figure both feared and pitied, his music echoing like a lament through valleys and hillsides. Men who heard him bowed their heads in silence, struck dumb by the weight of his sorrow. Women who listened wept, but also yearned, for in his grief there was beauty, and in his music, desire. Yet he turned from them all. No glance stirred his heart, no smile warmed him. His love belonged to Eurydice alone, and to her absence. This devotion, so absolute, drew whispers. In a world where marriage was duty, where men and women bound families together with children, Orpheus refused. He would not take another wife, would not lie with another woman. Some said he had scorned the daughters of Thrace, rejecting them with bitter words, swearing he would never love again. Others claimed he turned his affection only to men thereafter, seeking in their embrace a companionship that did not betray Eurydice's memory. Either way, the truth was clear. Orpheus' love had become forbidden, not by society alone but by death itself. For what can a man do, when the one he loves is gone beyond recall? To love her still is to defy the order of the world. To refuse all others is to isolate himself from the living. His love for Eurydice, pure and unwavering, became both his strength and his doom. It lifted him above ordinary men, but it also marked him as apart, untouchable, unyielding. The Greeks told stories of women spurned by him, women who longed for his song, his gaze, his touch, but who found only rejection. Among them were the Maenads, wild followers of Dionysus, the god of frenzy and ecstasy. They lived in abandon, in the swirl of wine and dance, their hair loose, their voices shrieking in the night. To them, Orpheus' refusal was an insult, a wound to their pride, a denial of their power. If no woman could stir him, then they would show him what it meant to reject the gifts of Dionysus. And so the story darkens again. One night, in a forest glade, as Orpheus sat with his lyre, playing yet another lament for Eurydice, the Maenads came upon him. Their torches flared, their cries pierced the night. They whirled in frenzied dance, their bodies painted, their eyes wild. They called to him, beckoning, taunting. But he did not rise. He did not join. His music did not falter, but it did not turn toward them. It remained a thread spun backward into memory, tied only to Eurydice. Their cries grew louder. They hurled insults, then stones. Yet even the stones stilled midair, struck dumb by his music, falling harmless at his feet. They tore branches, but the branches too fell silent, unwilling to harm the singer. The Maenads screamed, their frenzy mounting, and in their rage they drowned him out. Pipes, drums, shrieks, their cacophony smothered his song, and in that moment of silence they struck. They fell upon him like a storm. His lyre clattered to the ground, its strings snapping. His voice was silenced beneath their cries. They tore him apart, limb from limb, their frenzy unstoppable. His head, severed, was cast into the river Hebrus, where it drifted, still singing Eurydice's name, carried by the current to the sea. His lyre, broken yet divine, floated with him, and later, the gods placed it among the stars as a constellation, so that his music might never truly vanish. And so ended Orpheus, not by age, not by battle, but by the fury of forbidden love turned to wrath. His refusal of all others, his devotion to one lost forever, became the spark that ignited his doom. Yet the Greeks did not tell this only as tragedy. They told it as truth, that love can be too strong for the world, too pure to survive among the living. That there is a point where devotion becomes defiance, where longing becomes exile. Orpheus' love for Eurydice was eternal, yes, but it was also forbidden, for it denied the laws that bind men to life, to community, to change. Imagine him one last time, not torn and broken but whole. Sitting in the twilight, his lyre across his knees, his eyes fixed not on the living but on memory. His song rises, fragile yet unyielding, carrying Eurydice's name into the night. Around him, the world stirs, listening, grieving, yearning. And then silence. A silence filled not only with loss, but with the recognition that love, when carried beyond its bounds, can destroy as much as it saves. This, too, the Greeks knew. That love is fire. It warms, it illuminates, it inspires. But if carried too far, if clutched too tightly, it consumes. Orpheus' forbidden love for Eurydice is not only his tragedy. It is ours. For who among us has not clung to what cannot return, who has not longed beyond what life allows? And so the story of forbidden love lingers, even as his body is scattered, even as his lyre rises into the sky. It is the song of devotion too strong for the world, the song of a man who could not, would not, let go. The Greeks believed the gods placed Orpheus' lyre among the constellations, so that the world would never be without his music. Look up at the night sky, there, where the strings of lyre gleam faintly. You see not only stars but memory, the shape of devotion, the sound of loss turned eternal. To the ancients, those stars were not cold fire, but reminders that art outlives even death. That love, though fragile in flesh, can endure in story. And what of his head, still singing as it drifted across the sea? The poets said it washed ashore at Lesbos, an island that became home to some of Greece's greatest lyric voices. Was it coincidence? Or was it a sign that his gift lived on, inspiring songs yet to be written, voices yet to rise? Even silence could not still him. His lament continued, carried by water, by wind, by hearts willing to hear. But what makes this story endure? Why has it been told and retold for more than 2,000 years? Why do we still feel its ache today? It is not because Orpheus conquered. He did not. He failed. Twice he lost her. His love was not rewarded, his courage not crowned. Yet within his failure lies truth. For who among us has not longed for what we cannot hold? Who has not reached, faltered, looked back too soon? Orpheus is not a hero of victory. He is a hero of recognition. In his story we see ourselves. His descent into the underworld is our descent into grief. His music is our voice, trembling with sorrow, shaping loss into something bearable. His turning back is our doubt, our weakness, the crack in our faith. His second loss is our regret, the wound that lingers long after time has passed. And his death at the hands of those who could not accept his devotion is the world's way of reminding us that love carried too far isolates, even destroys. Yet still, the story does not fade. For though it ends in silence, it also ends in song. His lyre shines in the heavens. His music lives in memory. His love, though forbidden, though undone, still speaks. Across centuries, across languages, across cultures, Orpheus and Eurydice remain. Imagine standing at the threshold of the underworld yourself, the air heavy, the shadows pressing close. Imagine hearing that faint, sorrowful melody drifting through the dark, the song of a man who would defy even death for love. Would you not stop? Would you not weep? That is why the story endures, because it feels eternal. The Romans told it, reshaping it into their own verses. Medieval poets carried it into their romances. Renaissance painters etched it into canvas, Baroque composers wove it into opera, modern writers reshaped it into plays, films, songs. Each age heard something different in his lyre, the defiance of art, the frailty of love, the inevitability of loss. But always, the heart of it remained, a man, a song, a woman lost, and the silence that follows. And so we, too, keep telling it. Not to solve it, not to soften it, but to sit with it. To remember that love is powerful, but not invincible. That music can move gods, but not erase death. That trust is fragile, and doubt is human. Yet perhaps this, too, is why the story comforts us. For even in failure, Orpheus reached. Even in loss, he sang. Even in death, his song became eternal. His story whispers that though love may falter, though we may lose, though silence may close in, still, what we loved can live on in memory, in song, in stars. And so, as the night gathers around us, listen. Do you hear it? The faint pluck of strings, the echo of a voice calling a name across eternity? That is Orpheus still, his lament woven into the fabric of the world. And if you listen long enough, you may find your own sorrow answered within it. For this is the truth the Greeks gave us: stories do not die. Love does not vanish. Songs, once sung, cannot be unmade. Orpheus failed, but his legend never fades. And so, as the night settles, may his music guide you, not into despair, but into understanding. May his love remind you of your own. May his silence teach you the value of trust, the cost of longing, the weight of memory. And when you look up at the stars, may you see in them the strings of his lyre, still shining, still singing, still carrying the name of Eurydice across the ages. And with that our journey ends. The meadow is quiet once more. The river flows on. The torches of the underworld burn low. But the song remains. Always.